Video 2, oh man, I looked right into that light. Can't see anything. Video 2 of this week, drifting towards disunion, or something like that. Oh yeah, drifting. We're here. We're doing this. We're disunioned at this point. Well, we're about to because South Carolina. Speaking of South Carolina, nope, that's where that's supposed to click. See, man, my transition didn't work that time. Speaking of South Carolina, is that what we're doing? Yes, December of 1860, South Carolina votes unanimously to secede from the Union. So they're the first state to go, which doesn't surprise anybody, right? Because, I mean, they're the ones who argued with Andrew Jackson, and they did right. So, okay, so we knew that they were going to go, but they're the ones who vote, and it's unanimous. And they are quickly followed by Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas. So those are the first seven. The first seven to go. We're going to add a couple more here in a little bit, but goodness. So in February of 1861, they're going to get together and they're going to form the Confederate States of America, which is the official moniker of the southern states. And they're going to elect Jefferson Davis. Jefferson Davis is he's from Mississippi. He was a senator from Mississippi. He was actually Secretary of War for a little bit under Franklin Pierce, but he's a slave owner. Wikipedia says that he owned up to 113 slaves, so I mean, he's a significantly large slave owner. And the stories say that when Mississippi seceded, that he wrote to the governor of Mississippi and said, "Hey, man, whatever you need, you let me know." Jefferson Davis believed himself to be a great general. He wanted to be General Davis. He wanted to be the commanding officer of the entire Southern Army. And then, oh, awkward, he got elected to become the president of the Confederate States of America. The story says that his wife watched him open up the letter that said, "Hey, congratulations, you were just elected as president of the South." And his wife said that his face looked like, oh man, because he wanted to be the general of the South and not the president of the South. Oh well, you know, whenever you say, whatever you need me to do, well then whatever you get to do is what you get to do. Where am I going with that? I don't know. All right, so, you know, people think, well, you know, Lincoln, and then, you know, as soon as Lincoln, and then when he became president, the South seceded. Well, no, not technically. As I mentioned at the end of the last video. So let's see, Lincoln is elected in November, in the Electoral College in December. So now he is officially president-elect. Then here in December, the states secede. Well, technically James Buchanan, President Buchanan, is still president. He's going to be president up to March 4th. So on March 4th, Lincoln becomes president. So again, you know, the president of the United States, when the Civil War, when the states seceded, was Buchanan. Now, what did Buchanan do about it? He did nothing. He was like, whoo, you know, I'm actually leaving the presidency here in like a couple months, so yeah, I'm not doing anything about that. And so he just dropped the whole thing into Lincoln's lap. Whew, way to go, Buchanan. That's why you are like towards the very bottom of the list of good presidents, Buchanan. All right. They tried. I mean, yes, the South voted that they seceded, and then we had some people who said, no, not yet, quite yet, please, let's do this. Okay, let's make one more compromise. One final chance of compromise. It's called the Crittenden Compromise. And so it's very much like the Missouri Compromise, which was ruled unconstitutional before, and so they're going to try to pass another unconstitutional law here that says we're going to draw a line. And if you're above the line, if you're below the line, right? And so there you go. And so if you're a territory north of the line or a territory south of the line, free and or slave, and if you become a state, it's popular sovereignty, so you can vote either way. And that seemed like that was, no, it didn't happen. And so it was voted down, and we have no recourse at this point. We're going to break up, So here we have one of the many maps of the breakup of the South, please note that they didn't actually plate tectonics, leave. They're still connected, but there you go. The South seceded. Many Southerners at this point, they were like, okay, we seceded, so we win, right? Because the North's not going to care. A lot of Southerners thought that the North wouldn't make it a big deal about this. The North would be happy because they got to keep all their stuff, and the South would be happy because they got to keep all their stuff, and everybody would just play nice from here on out. Yeah, that didn't happen. Please note that we have 3 different types of states here. Well, actually, it says 4 here. The Union, which is in the north, the Union right there. And then you have the South right there. Please pay attention that there's a couple of states right along that border that are still in the north. We're going to call them the border states. And the border states are going to be a big deal for us because the border states are slave states that stayed in the Union. I know. Slave states that stayed in the Union. Which, obviously, that's a whole bunch of battles are going to be fought right there. Okay. Did I say anything about... I did not. Did I? I did not. I like this cartoon down here. This is what the American bald eagle looked like when James Buchanan started his presidency in 1856. And then this is what the American bald eagle looked like as Buchanan was leaving the office and letting Lincoln walk in the door. So clearly... Is that Republican or is that Democrat? Oh yeah, that'd be a Republican political cartoon. All right. Did I just do this? Yeah, I just did this one. Okay. Oh, I'm just bouncing back and forth. Crittenden. Oh, a little snake picture. Last time we saw this, it was Benjamin Franklin. Join or die. Oh, so President Jefferson Davis is going to say, hey, that works so well, almost exactly 100 years before, it works so well that we're going to do it here. And so you have this snake, and it says, unite or die, unless you're dyslexic, and then that says untie or die. South Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama with an extra A. North Carolina, Texas, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, Florida, Arkansas with an extra R. I guess that's Tennessee, Kentucky with backwards Y, because, Kentucky, then backwards Y. And then Missouri at the back end, and it says, slave states, you better get it together. We better work on this together, or it's not going to work for us. Love, Jefferson Davis. All right. Well, somebody's got to fire the first shot, right? So Fort Sumter. Please know I did miss. That's correct spelling, but over here that's an incorrect spelling. I typed that in, and it looks like I was thinking about Charles Sumner, not Sumter. So, look, at least I caught my mistake. There's like another mistake coming, but you know what? I'm not even going to tell you what it is. Maybe you won't find it. Fort Sumter. So this is Charleston, South Carolina. South Carolina, so obviously in the South, a big Confederacy state, and Fort Sumter, which is owned by the Union. All right, so we've got 2 forts here. We've got Fort Sumter, which is in the middle of Charleston Harbor, and Fort Moultrie. General Anderson decided that, a Union general, he decided that the South was going to come get him, and so what do we say? When you take a cannon and then you disable the cannon by filling the barrel with concrete, basically, it's called, spiking the cannon. So he spiked a whole bunch of cannon that he could not carry with him, and then he took a couple of smaller cannons and he took them on a boat and he went across the harbor to Fort Sumter, right there in the middle of the little blue dot. From Fort Moultrie to Fort Sumter, this is about, that is not quite 1 mile. Not quite 1 mile, but so it's pretty far. From this point where the people started firing at Fort Sumter from that point to Fort Sumter, is about 3,000 some odd feet, so we're talking about 10 football fields. So if you go to Fort Sumter today, if you go to Charleston today, and you want to go out to Charleston Bay and look at Fort Sumter, please note, bring your binoculars, because it's pretty good distance. But they're firing cannons at each other. Oh, let me tell you the story. So, General Anderson, Union General, he's going to hold up in Fort Sumter, and then he's going to write a letter to, at this point now, President Lincoln, and he's going to say, hey, President Lincoln, we're going to run out of food. We're going to run out of food and supplies by April 15th. So President Lincoln says, okay, I'm going to send you food. And so he's going to send a flotilla of ships down to Fort Sumter. Now the deal is, obviously, if you send Union ships down into the South and go up into the Charleston Bay, that's clearly an act of war from the South's point of view. And Jefferson Davis and the South said, no, you cannot send, you can't send troops or weapons or, for that matter, food. And Lincoln's like, you tell me I can't send food to my people? And so there you go. On April 11th, the first ships started. The first ships were coming pretty close, and a couple of cadets from the Citadel fired just some muskets, or some muskets, I guess, rifles, out at the ships. So those were really the first shots. But then it was April 12th. So there's your date, April 12th of 61. In fact, 4:30 in the morning, that the South, that they opened fire on the fort at 4:30 in the morning. The stories say, as the sun came up over the horizon, that people from Charleston, the gentlemen and the ladies, remember we have the aristocratic South down there, and they came out and kind of sat there on the shore and watched and cheered the bombardment of the northern fort there in the harbor. That's how the Civil War started. The fort held out for 34 hours, and then ultimately they're going to surrender because a couple things. One, they only had limited ammunition, and two, some of their big bombs that they were going to use, they didn't have any fuses for the bombs to light the bombs to make them explode, and so basically they were just big chunks of iron. And I mean, you can damage buildings with big chunks of iron, but big chunks of iron don't tend to kill big swaths of people because they just kind of, it's like a bowling ball, so it doesn't really do too much. So they surrendered. So Fort Sumter, April 12th, 1861, the first big shots of the American Civil War. Lincoln had been president at this point for only 6 weeks. All right, like I said, we had border states. Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, Delaware are going to be border states, and so they are slave states that are still in the Union. We are going to have a situation here. We have Virginia. We're looking at Virginia. The Civil War is going to start as Virginia, and then in 1863, West Virginia is going to secede from Virginia, and then is going to join the Union. So, okay, what was I saying? Okay, why is this a big deal? Why is the border states a big deal? Well, one of the big deals is the Ohio River. So the Ohio River coming down, Ohio, coming down to north of Kentucky, and then south of Indiana and Illinois, and then ultimately down in Mississippi. This is a major artery. It's a major tributary. No, it's just a major river, and so people are going to use this for military, obviously uses. That's why I said why I use the word uses. Uses for the uses. It's Wednesday. Okay, moving on. Big river, you can use it to move military supplies. Let's see, there you go. Lincoln. All right, please note that Lincoln, at the beginning of the Civil War, and really all the way up to the end of the Civil War, he basically said, look, one of his famous quotes, and I'm paraphrasing, if I can save the Union by getting rid of slavery, I'm going to do it. But if I can save the Union by keeping slavery, I'm going to do it. The most important thing to Lincoln was to bring the South back to the North and to have a complete whole country. That was his biggest goal. I mean, and so he did say, if the South stays as slave states, as long as they're part of the United States, he's going to be okay with that. Now, obviously, we're gonna see things that he's going to be doing, like the Emancipation Proclamation, etc. When we get there, but we got to be careful. What does he actually say? All right. Also note, simply because where we are, the 5 civilized tribes. So the 5 civilized tribes: Creek, Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Seminole. Oh, you knew that anyway. Good for you. The 5 civilized tribes. They. I'm trying to think if any of them didn't break. Well, was the Chickasaw? Nice Chickasaw. The vast majority of the 5 civilized tribes broke. Their tribes broke in half, kind of like the Union. And so, for example, the Cherokee, John Ross is going to be in charge of the northern faction of the Cherokee, and then they're going to be the full bloods, and then you have the mixed bloods, so the mixed blood Cherokee, and they're going to be led by Stan Wadey and Elias Boudinot and that gang. And so the Cherokees are going to break up. The Choctaw are going to mix up, and the Creek, the North Creek and the South Creek. You've got Apothia Holo, and hey, pay attention to your Oklahoma history teachers. And there you go. That's good stuff, man. I wish I could. I don't have time. I'm moving on. At the beginning of the war, if you look at it on paper, it seems pretty easy. If you look at the distribution of forces, the North has double the population. The North has the bigger army. The North has all the manufacturing. The North has the majority of the railroads. The North has the North. It's got a lot of good stuff. Comparatively to the South, it's got better organization. It's got more money in the bank. So it seems like this is an easy call, right, of who's going to win. But here's what the South has. The South doesn't have to win the war. They don't have to win. Why? Because they're fighting a defensive war. The South basically says, we've succeeded. No, we have seceded. Succeeded is different. We have succeeded at seceding. And so for you to beat us, you have to bring us back. We don't want to go back. So if all we do is status quo, if we just stay where we are, then we win. So see, they don't have to beat the North. They just have to not lose to the North. And so if you're fighting a defensive war, that's quite a bit easier than trying to fight an offensive war and trying to gain ground. So the South has an advantage in that layout, right? And then, well, next week when we get to, the next time we do videos, we'll talk about the leadership with regard to generals and how that all works. All right. So speaking of Lincoln, what could have been, right? President Lincoln asked General Robert E. Lee, "Hey man, you're my guy. You're my guy. After all, you went down there and captured John Brown down in West Virginia and everything. So hey, or Virginia wasn't West Virginia, but hey, you're my guy. And with you, we'll whip the South back, and we'll be done before Labor Day." And they didn't have Labor Day yet, but we'll be done by soon. And gosh, if Robert E. Lee had said, "I'm your man, boss," but he didn't. He said, "President Lincoln, here's the problem. I'm from Virginia, and Virginia seceded. And I get what you're saying, but I'm a Virginian first. States' rights versus national." And Robert E. Lee was a states' rights person. So he said, "Thank you, but no thank you," and he tendered his resignation to President Lincoln, and he joined the South. It's pretty easy to argue that the best general of the war was Robert E. Lee, and if the North had had him, Civil War might have been real quick, but it wasn't like that, so there you go. Oh, we're not talking about generals. That's the next video. Moving on. You got General Sherman, General Grant, General Beauregard, and you got General Snupp. Okay. King Cotton. I like this poem. Here we go. Ready? the end of King Cotton. Behold me dangling up and down in a hemp tie instead of a cotton crown. Neither my leg bale nor cotton bale could save me from the coffin's nail. And here I swing in air suspended, and at the rope's end treason's ended. That's actually pretty good. I'm impressed with that. All right, so the South, right? Cotton economy. And the South was thinking to themselves, well, we still have an advantage in that Britain, and for that matter Europe, wants our cotton. And so we'll sell directly to Britain. And Britain will have to, they're going to buy cotton from us. I guess they thought that might work. Here's the problem. Britain and France had both already said no to slavery. So on the moral high ground, they weren't very big friends with the South when it came to morality. And then at that point, Britain actually had an overstock of cotton. Like in 1861, they had an overstock. So the South, Britain basically said, we don't really need your cotton right now. So that devastated the South. And then on top of that, to get from point A, the South, to point B, Great Britain, you had to go through the North's blockade. The North had sent ships down to blockade the South from getting either in or out. And Britain said, no, we don't want to do that. So that really hurt the South's chances because they weren't getting any foreign help. Now, I say all that to say this. We'll get that in a little bit. So King Corn and so there's King Cotton and King Corn and King Wheat. The North is selling corn and wheat to Britain. So they're still making money. There were some foreign issues. The Trent Affair. So in 1861, a British ship, the HMS His Majesty's ship. Oh, was it a female at that one? 61. No, this guy. In HMS His Majesty's ship, the Trent, His Majesty's ship Trent, they had two Confederate diplomats who were going to go to Britain to negotiate a treaty, right? Well, the North captured the ship and said, nope, get off the ship. You can't go through our blockade. And Britain actually got upset with that. And I understand this because Britain said you can't do this because they're diplomats. And one of the rules is that you don't mess with other countries' diplomats because they might be negotiating for peace or whatever. So that's kind of like it's like a rule of war. You don't hurt the messenger. Don't kill the messenger, right? And so Britain got upset with this. In fact, they said, if you don't release those diplomats and let them come to Great Britain, we're going to start stockpiling some soldiers in Canada, North. And the North said, all right, fine. By the way, meanwhile, over there in Britain, there were some Southern sympathizers, and there may have been some boat building for the South over there in Great Britain, and those boats may have been built, and then the Union Jack, which is the British flag, was put on the boat, and then they would sail out, and then over the edge of the world, and then once they got past the edge of the world, they would change it to the Confederate flag. Well, there you go. Okay. Mexico. 1863, Mexico. French Emperor Napoleon III. Yes, the third. So Napoleon I put his hand. Oh, is this guy got his hand in his? Oh, he's not even putting his hand. Wait, he's got. Is that his thumb? I'm just now looking at this. So he's got his thumb into his thing. So does that mean that he's an aristocrat? I don't know because you got to put your whole hand in. But he's just got his. I don't know. Well, his grandfather was the guy with the French Emperor Napoleon III said, we want Mexico. So they invaded Mexico and took over Mexico City, and he installed Maximilian as a puppet governor. And so, yay! Now here's the deal. You're saying to yourself, France can't do that. The Monroe Doctrine Monroe Doctrine says, Europe, stay out of our business. Well, right. But see, France, they were paying attention to their American history teacher when the American history teacher said, oh, by the way, America is in the middle of a big civil war. Well, they're about to be in in 1863, that we're in the middle of a big civil war, Gettysburg and things like that. And so the France was like, hey, maybe the Americans won't even notice that we're going to take over Mexico. And we let them. I say we let them. I mean, we didn't really have a choice. But then, and kind of jumping ahead, as soon as the Civil War ended, yeah, we were like, hey, France, not cool. 65, at the end of the Civil War, the U.S. threatened to invade Mexico and remove the French. And so, there you go. President Davis, because Thomas Jefferson, President Jefferson Davis. So, again, he wanted to be the head general instead of the president. So there you go. So he's kind of a gruff kind of a guy. He didn't have a lot of friends. In fact, it was my way or the highway kind of a thing. And he's not going to get along with a lot of people, which is a huge problem for the South when it comes to who's actually dictating how the war is being fought, that kind of stuff. Again, next chapter. So President Davis is he's going to again be the president of the South, and they're going to put the capital in Richmond, Virginia. And I know you're sitting here thinking, okay, Virginia, that's a southern state, and so that makes sense. And of course, Virginia, I mean, they're the the populous state. And yeah, Virginia. So right before I turned on the video thing here, I was like, Richmond, Virginia, that's not that far from Washington, D.C. So I went to Google Maps and I mapped it. I did the little dot to the dot thing, and from Richmond, Virginia to Washington, D.C., it's only 90 miles. 90 miles. I mean, you can bike ride 90 miles in a day. Well, most of us can. Well, some of us can. I mean, you'd have to be, to be in shape. But 90 miles in a day, you could do that. I mean, you can drive in a car. You can do 90 miles, and well, for some of you, since you're doing the speed limit, it would take you an hour and a half. But for others of you, so it's only 90 miles away. So that always is interesting to me. No, that's war strategy. We're not talking about that until the next chapter. All right. So Jefferson Davis, the Constitution of the South. Now this is kind of interesting to me. The Constitution of the South says it is okay. It's actually written in the Constitution of the Confederacy. It is okay for a state to secede from the Confederacy. So there's a whole bunch of states who are secessionist states, and now you're telling them, by the way, if you don't like how we're doing it, because you didn't like how they're doing it, and now we don't like it, then you can secede and be your own country. I don't think that would ever. I think that's a good idea. All right. Please note, that is not Lincoln, that's Davis. They kind of look a little bit alike. So, Abraham Lincoln, as president, his timing could not have been better. When he assumed office on March 4th of 61, the Congress was not in session. And when Congress is not in session, you got to get stuff done, then the president orders executive orders. So, Lincoln, on day one, started issuing executive orders, kind of like other presidents of recent note. And so here we have, and maybe a coming up note, at his inauguration, Congress not in order. So what did he do? So Lincoln signed an executive order for the naval blockade at the South. He increased the size of the federal military. He directed more money is being spent on military and then for private citizens to fight. And here we go. And he suspended the writ of habeas corpus. As a reminder, the writ of habeas corpus is the right to be told basically why you're being thrown in jail. I mean, that's the simplified version of that. But the right to be told why you're being thrown in jail. You can't be thrown in jail for no reason and then kept there. That's habeas corpus. Habeas, to have, corpus, the body. We can't have your body for an extended length of time without, actually prosecuting you. Habeas corpus. Abraham Lincoln suspended the writ of habeas corpus. Now, please note, the writ of habeas corpus is actually, there's a line in the Constitution that says we have that right. We have the right to habeas corpus. It's in the Constitution. And he suspended that. So we have the political cartoon here. This is George Washington. It kind of looks like George Washington, and it's George Washington. His various body parts are part of the Constitution. And then here's Abraham Lincoln setting fire, and down here it says writ of habeas corpus suspended. But Abraham Lincoln setting fire to George Washington and the Constitution. Okay, well that's illegal. I'm sure it's fine. Volunteers and draftees, North and South. Both sides instituted drafts in 62 and 63, and so we're going to have the age from 18 to 35. And then as we get closer to the end of the Civil War, the ages are going to go up with regard to who can be drafted. But both sides are going to draft. So remember, a draft is, we're going to put everybody's name in a hat. We're going to, well, not the females, but we're going to put all the eligible males in the hat, and whites, not African Americans, because African Americans weren't citizens according to Dred Scott. We're going to put all the eligible males in their names in the hat, and we're going to draw their names. And if their name is drawn, then they're going to go into the military. Please note, in the North, they had an exception that said, if your name is drawn and you don't want to do it, then you can pay $300. I mean, that's a chunk of change. I mean, today we would say that would be what about $10,000 to not go to the draft. And if you think about that in the year 2020, if we were to suddenly have a draft today, and we're going to put all of your names in all of your names in a hat, and we're going to start drawing out your name. But if your name's chosen and you don't want to go, if you pay $10,000, you're off the hook. Can you imagine what would happen? I mean, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and the rich don't go to war, and the poor people have to go to war because they can't buy themselves out of war. And yeah, oh hey, it happened in New York City. They called them the draft riots, or the Manhattan draft riots. So in New York City, they found out about this, and if we're talking about Manhattan, right? So Manhattan, there was quite a few rich people in Manhattan, but then a lot of poor whites as well. And so as the names are being drawn, and the poor whites are like, okay, I got drawn, so I'm going to go be in the military, and then the rich people are like, no, here's your $300. Well, the poor whites started doing the math, and they're like, well, wait. So one, you guys aren't going, even though everybody's equal according to the Declaration of Independence. But two, here's the problem, that if the poor whites are leaving New York City because we're going to go fight the war, then our jobs, nobody's going to be here to take or nobody's going to be here for our jobs, which means people are going to come in, scab workers are going to come in and take our jobs. Well, who is that? Well, that's the African Americans. The African Americans who cannot be drafted because they're not people, according to Dred Scott. And so the poor whites are saying, no, this isn't appropriate because when we get drafted, our jobs are going to go to the African Americans. Remember, we talked about this. The North's idea of, the African race, they're good people, but individual, no, I don't have any friends, right? So here we have the same situation. The African people, they're good people, but that African is taking my job. And so we're going to have a race riot in New York City between the poor whites and the African Americans. And it's kind of interesting. I was looking this up earlier this morning just to get some numbers, and of course I've forgotten all the numbers. But what struck me is that at the website I was looking at said that this was the worst race riot in the history of the United States, and I was like, really? The worst race riot in the history of the United States? I mean, if you don't count the Tulsa race riot. 1921, but because hardly anybody thinks about that, or the summer of 2020. But you got to give the website a chance to correct itself. Resulting in the deaths of 105 people. I did look at several different websites, and it said anywhere between 105 to 115 to 119. So depending on which website you look at, Lincoln is going to respond to these critics with regard to draft dodging. He's going to throw 13,000 people, anti-drafters, in jail. And he's going to censor the newspapers. So if a newspaper is anti-Lincoln, he's going to censor them. Okay, First Amendment violation, anybody? First Amendment violation, anybody? But before we do, I mean, this is not going to be the first time this is going to happen. Oh, well, it's not the first time because John Adams, right, with the Alien and Sedition Acts. But it's not the last time this is going to happen. So here we have a sitting president who says, we're at war, therefore I can suspend articles of the Constitution, or suspend parts of the Constitution. But the First Amendment, I mean, that seems like that's a big deal, right? Well, I mean, we're going to do that, and we're going to do that in 1917 with U.S. versus Schenck and the communists. And so we're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep doing it. Fortunately, in the year 2020, nobody ever censors anything that we say. I laugh at myself. Moving on. Wait, sound. Yeah, I think that's good. We're almost done. This is pretty short. I mean, short for me. Let's see. So the South, they secede, but here's the deal. Abraham Lincoln President Lincoln, he never actually admitted that the South seceded. And so kind of a weird little thing, the South was like, all right, all the congressmen and the senators are like, all right, see ya. And so they just like walked out and left, and they formed their own Congress down in Richmond, Virginia. Well, Abraham Lincoln left their seats there. They didn't take the seats out. They didn't say, okay, well, it's just the Republicans, and so now we just have a Republican Congress. No, Abraham Lincoln said, well, they walked out, but their seats are still there, so they could still vote if they wanted to, but they're not here to vote. So the Republicans were like, well, if they're not here to vote, let's just start passing like a whole bunch of stuff. And so they did. So the Republicans passed the Moral Tariff Act of 61 that raised the tariffs 5 and 10% back to where the Republicans felt more comfortable. And since the South, who doesn't want a high tariff, since the South wasn't there to vote no, well, there you go. It passed pretty easy. Let's see. Yeah, that's what I want to say about that. Monies. The North and South both issued paper money, and so you have the greenbacks. The greenbacks from the North, they were not backed by the gold standard, so they started printing more money than they had gold. Ooh, that'll get you in trouble. We call that inflation. But they were backed by the perceived strength of the Union. If you have a greenback, then we know it's good because the Union's going to win the war, and Abraham Lincoln's the savior of everything. So that the South has a similar idea. They have the bluebacks, right? The bluebacks, and the bluebacks they're backed by the power of the South. And unfortunately for the people who bought a whole bunch of this money, by 1865 the inflation rate had, and yeah, that money didn't last. Although today, if you can find some bluebacks, you can sell it on eBay. 1863, we authorized the national banking system. Are you sitting here thinking, wait, we haven't had a bank since Andrew Jackson? Andrew Jackson, of course, Jackson got rid of the bank in 28, 29, 30, 31. We haven't had a bank for 30 years? What did we do with all that money? I'm sure it was all accounted for. Here's your last slide. A couple stories though. So let's see. McCormick's Reaper expands harvest. So in the North, they're going to. I mean, yes, obviously we're going to be in a civil war next video, but the North is going to be making some money. So Cyrus McCormick is going to invent the Reaper, and the Reaper is going to change how we harvest grains, and we're going to start making big money on wheat. Let's see. Petroleum. Petroleum. So oil, black gold. Oil is, last time I said black gold, we were talking about slaves like 3 videos ago. But this is a different type of black gold. Got to keep all of our metaphors and pejoratives. We got to keep it. Got to figure out our timeline. black gold in Pennsylvania. So the story says, people were walking around and somebody kicked up a rock, and then there was, there was oil under the rock, and they're like, oh, oil, that's great. What do you need oil for in in the 1850s? What do you need oil for? Because we don't need gasoline yet. I mean, Henry Ford is not. I mean, I guess he's alive, but hey, we haven't had. Is he alive? I'm sure he is. Anyway, but we don't have cars yet. We don't have airplanes yet. We don't. I mean, what do we need gasoline for? So what do we need oil for? Well, you can lubricate different parts. You could, but we're not. But our parts aren't spinning that fast yet. So what do you need it for? You need it to light your lamps. Right? That's it. You need to light your lamps so you can see in the dark. So before they discovered oil, before they discovered ground oil, rock oil, they used whale oil. Yeah, yeah, they did. They melted the fat from whales and used that as oil to light their lamps. And if you get a chance to read Moby Dick, you can learn way too much about how whaling worked in the 1800s. I mean, like, seriously, way too much. Although the scrimshaw was really interesting. But the point is that, no, there's no point. That's why you needed oil. So they discovered oil in Pennsylvania. Somebody kicked over a rock, and then some oil company was like, you know what, you could use that in lamps. So they discovered a refining process that they could then use the oil from the ground and put it in lamps. But here's the deal. I mean, you can only kick over so many rocks, and there's can only be so many puddles of oil. So where are you going to get the oil? And then somebody said, well, maybe you could dig for oil. So they started to dig literally with shovels. They're trying to find oil, and you find some deposits, but then I mean, it's not the opportunity cost. You're spending way too much trying to get it out of the ground for what you're getting it to sell it. So somebody's got to come up with a plan, and Edwin Drake. Look at me, I got that name perfectly right the first time. Edwin Drake. He's a railroad worker, and he's going to kind of play two different oil companies, and he's going to be hired by, like I said, two different oil companies at the same time to go out and see if he can come up with an economical way of getting oil out of the ground. And so he starts to drill. He and a couple of his buddies, they start to drill in Titusville, Pennsylvania. Do I have that up there? No, that's new information. In Titusville, Pennsylvania, so they start digging, and they get down to 9 feet, and by the time they get 9 feet down, the sides of the hole are coming in, and the water seeping in, and it's just not working for him. And so he comes up with an interesting idea. He says, hey, how about this? Instead of just dropping the drill down, let's put a pipe down and then put the drill inside the pipe, and then if water or rock cave in or whatever happens, then it will come up against the pipe, but it won't interfere with the drill. So what we'll do is we'll just keep adding pipe at the top as the drill goes lower and lower. We'll just keep adding more pipe. And so I know you're sitting there thinking, yeah, of course. Right, but he's the one who came up with this idea. So they called this Drake's Folly because they could only dig was it 3 feet? 3 feet per day. They could only dig that far down. So it wasn't very fast. People would come out spectators would come out and laugh, and they called it Drake's Folly. Folly meaning his enterprise that was not going to work and that he was going to lose money. But they came out and they laughed at him every day, and he's only making 3 feet a day drilling, and he's not finding any oil. He hits bedrock, and he's not finding any oil, and he drills further, and then now he's running out of money because his investors had only given him $2,000, and so then he takes a personal loan out for $500, and he drills down, and then he hits 69.5 feet. Do I have that up there? 69.5 feet. Because none of you are going to look that up, so I'm going to throw it out there like I know what I'm talking about. 69.5 feet, and he hits I think it was like a crevice or something, and then his workers like, oh man, all right, you know what, we're calling it a day. And so they went home, and the next morning they show up, and sure enough, they had struck oil, and the oil was coming up the pipe. And they used a hand pump, and they got the top part of the oil out, and they put it in a bathtub. And then there you go. And then people started making money on oil. By 1870, so that was 1858. That was 1858, Drake's Folly. So then we have the 59ers. So the 49ers are the gold people, the 59ers are the oil people. So the 59ers run over to Pennsylvania, they start drilling everywhere. By 1870, so we're talking 5 years after the Civil War, petroleum is the United States' fourth biggest export at 20 million barrels a year. 20 million barrels a year. I think Drake's Folly, it was like 25 barrels a day. I think that they maxed out at that, but okay. And of course, we know here in Oklahoma, you can make some money digging for oil. Well, depending on current gas prices. Homestead Act of 1862 was passed by the Republican Congress because there were no Democrats that said no because they weren't there. And 1862, the act said, and this was different. The first Homestead Act said 25 cents an acre. Well, this one says you get it free. You get free land out there in the West with caveats. And we're going to talk about those caveats in about 3 videos from now. But free land! Free land! Is that still in effect today? No. I think in 1976 was the last time somebody used the Homestead Act to get free land. 1976. I mean, I was even alive in I was alive. Henry Ford? No, Henry. Union women fill jobs. Start the U.S. Sanitary Commission. Well, that seems important. The Sanitary Commission to provide medical support for the Civil War. All right. Yep, that's it. All right. There you go. There are 2 videos for this week. And then next week, no, actually, technically, because this is November, I have no idea what today is. November what? 15th? Okay, we'll say the 15th. No, it's only later than that. Thanksgiving is next week. So we don't have a video next week. Oh, it's the 18th. I was not too far off. Well, about 3 days. So next week is Thanksgiving. So you're not even going to see this for like, yeah, hey, I made this video like 13 days early. Well, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving dinner, and glad to see you back. And we'll have Zoom tomorrow, and we're just a couple weeks from Christmas. It's kind of weird saying that on November 18th, but all right. You know the drill. Be good. I'll see you later.